Would you like to entertain the audience? You have slightly longer than 20 minutes, so don't get too worried about the time.
Okay. Thanks, you. Bonjour. Good morning to everyone. I'll do my presentation in Spanish. We are going to start. Mi presentación trata de dar soluciones para un enfoque sostenible en la conservación de carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico y cómo desde la Asociación Técnica de Emulsiones ATEP en España hemos estado trabajando para colaborar con distintos organismos en la elaboración de una normativa adaptada a contemplar las técnicas con emulsión como soluciones de conservación en este tipo de carreteras. Bien. Dicho esto, la presentación va a estar estructurada de la siguiente manera. Haré una pequeña introducción general sobre la red de carreteras que tenemos en España, particularizando después en cuáles son las características de las carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico. Analizaremos cuáles son las soluciones de conservación más adecuadas para estas carreteras en función de un análisis de los deterioros, de los defectos que suelen presentar estas carreteras, cuáles son, por tanto, las técnicas más idóneas para la conservación de estas carreteras y cuáles son las referencias normativas que detectamos que tienen que ser implementadas. Por supuesto, después, la propuesta de soluciones con técnicas con emulsión que requiere de esta adaptación de la normativa para carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico. Como decía, esta sería la red de carreteras en España. Tenemos en torno a 166.000 kilómetros de carreteras, de las cuales más del 50% son de la red del Estado, con alta categoría de tráfico, la mayoría de ellas. En la red autonómica y en la red de diputaciones tenemos más del 50%, también de casi el 50% de esta red de carreteras, y luego hay una pequeña proporción de carreteras que dependen de los ayuntamientos y de otros organismos. Pues bien, definiendo las carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico como aquellas que tienen una intensidad media diaria de vehículos de unos 2.000 vehículos por día, tenemos que en España 120.000 kilómetros de nuestras carreteras, es decir, casi el 70%, corresponden a estas carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico. Como características particulares de estas carreteras diremos que más o menos tienen una anchura entre 6 y 7 metros, solo el 7% de ellas tienen más de 8 metros, lo normal es entre 6 y 7. Y en cuanto al tipo de pavimento que presentan, el 61% están pavimentadas con mezclas asfálticas en caliente, el 30% disponen de tratamientos superficiales, el 6% lechadas bituminosas microaglomerados en frío y el 3% otros tratamientos. En estas carreteras tenemos una accidentabilidad elevada para el tráfico que estas carreteras soportan, y esto está basado precisamente en el estado de conservación de estas carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico. Normalmente hay un envejecimiento y un deterioro del firme que supone una disminución de los niveles de seguridad y confort para el usuario. Si fijamos una línea en el 60%, el 65% como el índice de deterioro que nos llevaría a tomar alguna acción en conservación, tenemos que muchas de estas carreteras tienen índices de deterioro superiores y que, por tanto, ya más que conservación preventiva debería hacerse unas reparaciones en mayor nivel, lo que supone un mayor tipo de actuaciones y de un mayor coste. Es como el ejemplo que se ve en algunas de esas fotografías, donde ya tenemos un índice de deterioro elevado. Bien, pues puesto que tenemos que conservar toda esta red de carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico, que es casi el 70% de nuestra red nacional, tendremos que evaluar en primer lugar cuál es el estado del firme que tienen esas carreteras para posteriormente hacer un análisis de cuáles serán las soluciones que mejor se adaptan a esa carretera en particular. Y una vez que hayamos decidido de entre todas las posibles cuál es la solución más adecuada, pues tendremos que tener en cuenta en esas técnicas cómo cada una de ellas contribuye en mayor o menor grado al medio ambiente, al entorno social y, por supuesto, también cómo es de viable económicamente esa solución. En cuanto al estado del firme, es muy importante que entremos en un análisis de los deterioros que existen, de la regularidad superficial, resistencia al deslizamiento, degradaciones posibles que pueda tener esa carretera y, por supuesto, en base a ese análisis haremos ese estudio de soluciones. Bien, la optimización entonces de las soluciones de conservación para estas carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico debe considerar las características técnicas y funcionales que tienen estas carreteras. Debemos conocer ese tipo de deterioros que tienen y, por supuesto, conocer su origen para proponer la técnica que mejor se adapta a esa solución. ¿Con qué criterios vamos a hacer esto y qué objetivos nos planteamos? Pues tienen que ser unos objetivos globales. Por supuesto, desde el enfoque de la sostenibilidad tendremos que considerar todas aquellas técnicas que aporten soluciones sostenibles, mayor resiliencia al cambio climático. Tenemos que hacer una conservación eficiente que nos garantice una mayor durabilidad de estas carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico, pero por supuesto también teniendo en cuenta aspectos relativos al análisis de ciclo de vida y a la economía circular. Bien, dicho esto, las técnicas que parecen más idóneas para la conservación de estas carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico son las técnicas que contemplan el empleo de las emulsiones bituminosas. Y dicho esto, pues podremos tener distintos tipos de soluciones en función del estado de conservación del firme y de los objetivos que pretendamos conseguir en cada carretera. Dentro de si nos fijamos en el diagrama que se ve en esta diapositiva, nos centraremos siempre en temperaturas por debajo de los 100 grados. Con las mezclas templadas trabajaremos precisamente en ese entorno, con emulsiones bituminosas en torno a 100 grados, pero con las técnicas en frío podremos trabajar a temperatura ambiente o hasta unos 40 grados, dependiendo del tipo de técnica y del procedimiento a emplear. Conocemos todos los distintos tipos de técnicas de conservación que se pueden utilizar, riegos con gravilla, lechadas bituminosas. Si es una rehabilitación ya podemos estar hablando de reciclados con emulsión, reciclados con cemento, reciclados mixtos y, por supuesto, este tipo de carreteras también conlleva su conservación, un fresado y reposición con mezcla bituminosa en caliente y en algunos casos capas de aglomerado en caliente de algo más de 6 centímetros. Bien, pues si nos centramos en cuál es la referencia normativa que tenemos, lo que nos encontramos en España es que muchas de las mezclas y de las técnicas que requieren el empleo de emulsiones se basan en normativas que actualmente se han derogado del Pliego General de Carreteras del Ministerio de Fomento. No existen documentos técnicos que hagan referencias normativas ni ahora mismo ni a las mezclas abiertas en frío, ni a la grava emulsión. Las mezclas templadas con emulsión tampoco están consideradas por el Ministerio de Fomento y, por supuesto, tampoco lo están los tratamientos superficiales mediante riego con gravilla. Los únicos que están considerados, eso sí, son los microaglomerados en frío. Respecto a los reciclados, se consideran algunos. Tenemos normativas y referencias a nivel estatal para los reciclados con emulsión cuando el 100%, al menos el 90% del material a reciclar sea de una mezcla bituminosa. En este escenario nos encontramos y lo que tenemos que hacer, y desde la Asociación Técnica de Emulsiones hemos estado trabajando en los últimos años, es para colaborar técnicamente en la elaboración de propuestas y que a través del Comité de Carreteras de Baja Intensidad de Tráfico de la Asociación Técnica de Carreteras pues se hagan propuestas de nuevos pliegos de prescripciones técnicas y recomendaciones, requisitos técnicos para estos tipos de mezclas de conservación en carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico. Así hemos colaborado en la elaboración de pliegos de prescripciones técnicas para distintos tipos de materiales que llevan asociado el empleo de emulsión. Por supuesto, todos los tipos de mezclas cuya normativa ha sido actualizada, se ha hecho actualizando lo que estaba antes en la normativa anterior y dando recomendaciones en lo referente a nomenclatura, a definición de materiales, marcado CE, mejora de protocolos de ensayo, métodos de ensayo que hemos estado hablando antes y, por supuesto, referente al control de calidad. Todo esto resultado de pliegos para la conservación de carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico nos ha permitido disponer de unos documentos técnicos nuevos que van a facilitar el empleo de todas estas técnicas en carreteras de baja intensidad de tráfico y que van a ser el soporte técnico que se necesitan por parte de aquellos que toman las decisiones para que este tipo de técnicas puedan ser consideradas mayormente en un futuro. Estos pliegos, una vez aprobados, se va a disponer de ellos en los sitios web que indico en la presentación y se ha creado además una web específica para colgar también estos documentos que se llama normativa de carreteras y que pueden en un futuro disponer de ellos como gusten para consultarlos. Y esto es todo. Muchas gracias por su atención y cedo la palabra a M.COLAS.
M.COLAS, sos verb, no habla español. J'ai parlé français très mal, so I'm going to speak in English, okay? So, all right. So the idea of that presentation is to show all the decision-making tools we have available in France. SFERB is a quite important association. In France, the market, and Etienne will talk about that later, we have around 800,000 tons of emulsion, and that's roughly half of Europe. So that's why sometimes we have some issue at the European level, okay? Because every country's got one vote, whatever tonnage they've got. What I'm going to do first, I'm going to do a quick introduction of the French market, but very quickly. Then I'm going to show you an institute which was set up in 2010, that's eDream. So it's not iDream, okay, like iPhone, but that's eDream, Institute for Route, Streets, and Infrastructure for Mobility. That will be interesting to look at that. Otherwise, we decided to have surface dressing guides through that institute in order to show to customers, to show to the industry, like the 101 or the rendu superficiel pour les nuls, in order for everybody to understand really what surface dressing is about and what are the goals of it. There is another guide which is micro-surfacing guide, and lately, and I was with some South African from Sabita last week, so they just laugh at us, we set up something based on Cape Seal in order to promote that technique in France as a waiting technique for the French market, which is sometimes difficult, linked to constraints in budget. And I always talk about the future. Mine is different, but that's life. So in France, like I said, 800,000 tons of emulsion, 200 million square meters of surface dressing, or chip seal, or spray seal, depending on the countries, and 50 million square meters of micro-surfacing. It's a very important market linked to the 1 million kilometer of the French network. French network, we have highways with toll, highways with no toll, but we have a lot of secondary network, which is the key and the most important part of our market. Everything is based on emulsion, more and more. We are the flux bitumen, which was done in the past, is decreasing, and the part which is important right now, that the polymer modified emulsion is from polymer modified bitumen or from latex modified, increasing a lot, okay? The idea that these techniques need some directions to be well applied. Larry talked about certification. The big difference in Europe that we have an end performance spec after 1 year. So if the crew is bad, they're going to pay for it, industry. If the crew is good, they won't pay for it. So that's something else. I think more and more we should look at performance, first of all, because our clients are losing a bit of their own experience, and industry right now is really the key for the development of those products. So I think that's important, that 1 year performance on surface dressing and macro-surfacing, this is really the key for achieving high quality without any certification. I'm not for certification because that's a bit complicated due to the market we have here in Europe. But I think that 1 year warranty is maybe the best way. We know that surface dressing or macro surfacing after 1 season will be okay. So I think that's important to look at that. We do a work, we do apply emulsion, we apply aggregate, and I think the performance after 1 year is one of the key success of those techniques, the way we do it now. So eDream, like I said, this is something interesting, eDream. What we have in eDream, we have the owners, states, departments, metropole, big cities. We have the engineering bureaus, we have the controllers, we have the state laboratories, we have the industry. And eDream is really the way that all the industry is working together in order to work together to set up documents and to provide the right instructions to the owner and to the industry. And I think that's a good example of a partnership which is very good. A lot of compromises already when we set up guides, but I think that's important that all the points of view are around the table in order to provide the best guides for the industry. So this guide obviously is in French, even if I pas parler bien français, but that guide is in French because that's the French way we do things back there. And that guide is really full of information. You have components, you have everything linked to that. We have our famous, so this one is not in Spanish but in French, but you have the one in English, we have one in every languages now, just to show that maintenance is the key. Like your car, like your house, you have to maintain roads in order to keep the road network the best way for the economy of the country. In France, 88% of the travelers are using roads. 88% of the freight is done by road. So this is a key for the economy of every country in the world. And we know that preventive maintenance will be one, and curative or whatever we have to do after a certain time is 10. So that means really the impact, we say in France, the gray depth, in order to show that if we don't do something now, at one stage you will have to spend so much money that you won't be able to do it. And like I say in the US, keep the good roads good. That's the most important thing. The destroyed one, that's too late. But keep the good network good by using surface treatment, micro-surfacing, or whatever you have to do back there. On that guide, they explain everything. They explain the way, why do we need switch jets in order to have the best things. They show you defects. They show you all the things we have to look at in order for the owner, for the industry to well understand exactly what's going on. And I think that's the key. We, on both sides, have to understand what are stakes every time we do a surface racing or macro surfacing guide, and jobs too. So on that guide, you're going to see constituents. They're going to talk about emulsion. They're going to talk about all the kind of binders used in that business. They're going to explain you what the choice of the techniques you have to use, if it's a single dressing, double dressing, racking, sandwich type, in order to match really the needs of the road, not the needs of the budget. The rate of application is well explained. We know that if it's shadow, if it's in the sun, if it's in the altitude, you have to do different things. You have to adapt the rate of emulsion, the kind of aggregate linked to really what's going on the road. And that's why it's important on that surface racing standard in Europe. If you do everything, that means from the start to the end of it, like we do in some department in France, you look at the job first. We say how much we have to put there. Then we apply it, and then 1 year after we check on it. And I think that's why performance-based are very, very important. There is some people from the department of Puy-de-Dôme, we do that. We do the analysis of the pavement the first year, then we do the rate, then we apply it, and then we check it 1 year after. And I think that's really important that for the benefits of surface treatment in our country. Job site phases, we know that safety on site is quite important. My company, that's one of the value of COLAS is safety. It's very important. We know that drivers, and many in my country, they are a bit wild sometimes. Red light is just an indication in some cities. But I mean, we have to be very careful on that because that's our people, that's our customers, they're on site, so that's quite important, safety. Then when the job is done, a year after, we look at it and we look at defects. So we have to qualify the defects in order to manage them, to know how much we've got, and linked to the specification of our customer, we have to look if it's exactly what's needed and what wanted the customer. And I think that complete approach on surface dressing is quite important. Like I said, the market is 200 million square meters every year. It's a very important market for the business. And compared to the US, where a lot of companies are selling the emulsion, some other are applying, in France, the main companies are doing everything. They manufacture the emulsion, they apply the surface dressing on site. We are completely integrated compared to a lot of US companies. So that's, like I say, every market, and we saw that in Europe, Every country's got its own road history. Everything is based on that, and I think that's important to keep that in mind when we do specification and when we do specific things. Important, I say that all the time, surface racings, micro-surfacing in Europe is based on a 1-year performance on site. That's the most important thing for our customer. They don't care about tests, they care about what's on the ground. We have to do tests, not what I said, but I think for our customer, which is important, that the behavior of the surface racing, of the micro-surfacing, linked to their maintenance political aspects. Lately, because of the budget on departments, on the state, on counties, we had to do something to have a weighting technique. And in South Africa, the name is Cape Seal, so it's a surface racing, or chip seal or spray seal, and on top you have a macro surfacing. My company was doing something different, but I won't talk about it today. But that's important, that's a weighting technique. And a lot of jobs when we do surface racing, because we have to advise our customer of the technique we have to choose. Sometimes, I know that in Normandy, 5% of the time, we have to say no, this is too late for surface racing. The road is too worn out before we can do something. And in order for that, we try to develop that Cape Seal technique at the industry level. And eDream, like I said, so it's a technical note from eDream to tell our customer, to tell the industry that now we have a new technique, which is surface racing with a kind of an open on the aggregate. You have 90% of the aggregate compared to surface racing. Then a macro surfacing on top in order to have a good reaction for cracking, reflective cracking, which is 80% of the flexible pavement in France. So I think that note is important too, because it was using the industry experience on the past 3-4 years, that was using our customers' experiences on site on the past 3 years, and we worked together in order to promote that note and to show that there is a new technique available now in pavement preservation in France. Like I say, in South Africa, they just laugh at us as usual. But I mean, that's important to see that through eDream, so that partnership between the industry, the customers, the engineer bureau, the laboratories from the state, were able to do something together and to provide new technique together. And I think the together is quite important in our country once in a while. So that's just to explain the technique. So first of all, the surface racings, a bit open on the aggregate. Then after that, we put a macro surfacing in order to ensure the good contact with the tires. And the good thing about the first layer, obviously the emulsion rate will be adapted to the kind of roads you have to play with in order to fill the cracks and to be very good at it. So that's a new technique. We did that on the national routes, we did that on departmental routes, and I think that so far it works very well. When it's well designed, it's always like that. So in the future, I think those guys are essential for the French market. Sorry, they are still in French. But I think that's a 101 on emulsion, then the 101 on surface racings, that's macro surfacing 101, just to explain all what is at stake every time you do a macro surfacing, what kind of road you have to look at, and everything like that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Francois and Marima. Are there any questions at the moment for either of these presenters in the audience? Just a quick reflection. I was thinking, you know, the interaction you have in France with all the stakeholders, it seems to be a good formula to make sure that everybody's actually wanting a successful end result, rather than, we heard earlier from Larry showing the examples of bad examples of application, and this is not what we want in the industry. So it's getting everybody together with the guidance note and everybody buying into that and supporting it seems to be a good, well, it's obviously working in France, so that's a good best practice to share. Okay, if there's no questions, we have our final, but last but not least, Etienne.